Captain Taman Park stared at the star charts on his screen. The numbers made no sense. According to every calculation, there should be 3 dead planets in this system. Instead, his sensors showed cities, forests, and millions of life forms on all 3 worlds. "So Young, run another scan," he said to his navigator. "Something's wrong with our data." So Young Kim's fingers danced across her control panel. Her dark eyes narrowed as she studied the results. "Captain, the scans are correct. Those planets are very much alive. But there's something else. I'm picking up massive industrial operations on all 3 worlds. Mining equipment, transport ships, the works." From the engineering station, Dongwu Li looked up with concern. "Boss, those mining operations are huge. I'm reading energy signatures that could power entire star systems. Whatever they're doing down there, it's not small scale." Taman felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The outer rim was supposed to be empty space, far from any major civilizations. The used Defiance was on a simple survey mission, cataloging resources and mapping hyperspace routes. They weren't equipped for first contact situations. "Unji, any signs of distress signals from the planets?" he asked his medical officer. Dr. Yunji Choi shook her head, her ponytail swaying. "Nothing on emergency frequencies, Captain. But I am detecting some unusual atmospheric readings. High levels of industrial pollutants, radiation signatures consistent with heavy mining operations." Weapons specialist Hyunwoo Nam spoke up from his station. "Captain, we've got company. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace." "They're big?" "Really big." The main screen flickered and showed 3 massive vessels approaching their position. Each ship was easily 10 times the size of the Defiance, their hulls gleaming with an odd purple metal that seemed to pulse with inner light. Strange energy patterns danced across their surfaces like living lightning. "They're scanning us," So Young reported. "Very aggressive scans. They're not just looking at our ship, they're analyzing our crew, our technology, everything." A communication signal crackled through the ship's speakers. The voice that emerged was deep and resonant, filled with an authority that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Unknown vessel, you are trespassing in Vorthic territory. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Taman took a deep breath. First contact protocols were clear, but they'd never expected to encounter an unknown species this far from Earth. "This is Captain Taman Park of the United Earth ship Defiance. We're on a peaceful survey mission. We weren't aware this system was claimed by anyone." Harsh laughter echoed through the CUM system. "Earth? We have you in our database, human. You are species classification 847 out of 1,200 cataloged intelligent life forms. Your threat assessment is listed as negligible." The contempt in the alien voice was unmistakable. Taman felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "We're not here to threaten anyone. We detected inhabited planets and wanted to make sure everything was all right. Your mining operations seem to be affecting the atmospheric conditions." "Our mining operations are none of your concern, inferior species. The native populations of these worlds exist to serve the Vorthic Empire, as do their resources. This is the natural order of the galaxy." From her station, Unji's voice was tight with anger. "Captain, I'm detecting massive population centers on those planets. Millions of beings. If those mining operations continue at this rate, the atmospheric damage will kill them all within months." Taman's hands clenched into fists. The cold weight in his stomach had turned into burning anger. "Vorthic vessel, you need to cease your mining operations immediately. You're committing genocide against the native populations." The laughter that came through the speakers was even harsher than before. "Genocide? You misunderstand the situation, little human. We are the Vorthic Empire, masters of energy manipulation and plasma weaponry. We have ruled this galaxy for over 50,000 years. The native species exist to serve us, just as your species exists to serve your betters." "We don't serve anyone," Taman said quietly. "You will learn. Perhaps watching the obliteration of these pathetic natives will teach you proper respect for the galactic hierarchy." On the main screen, they watched in horror as beams of pure plasma lanced down from orbital platforms, striking population centers. On the planets below, entire cities vanished in seconds, replaced by glowing craters. "They're murdering millions," Eunji whispered. Hyun-woo's voice was deadly calm. "Captain, their weapons are powering up. All 3 ships are targeting us." Taemin stood up from his command chair. His voice carried across the bridge with absolute certainty. "All hands, battle stations, we're going to stop this." "Sir," So-young said carefully, "our weapons are designed for asteroid mining and debris clearing. Their ships are military dreadnoughts. We don't stand a chance." "Then we make a chance," Taemin replied. "Dongwoo, I need everything the engines can give us." "Hyun-woo, start targeting their weapon systems." "So-young, plot an attack course." "Yoonji, prep the medical bay for casualties." The Vorthic commander's voice crackled through the speakers again. "Foolish humans. Your ship will be destroyed in 30 seconds. Perhaps next time your species will show proper respect to their superiors." "Hyun-woo, fire everything we have." Taemin ordered. The Defiance's mining lasers and debris clearance charges struck the lead Vorthic ship. The weapons barely scratched the alien vessel's shields, but something unexpected happened. The energy patterns dancing across the Vorthic hull flickered and stuttered. "Their shields are adaptive," Dongwoo called out, studying his readings. "They adjust to incoming energy frequencies. But there's a split-second delay in the adaptation cycle. Can you exploit it?" Taemin asked. Dong-woo, single quotes as fingers flew across his controls. "I'm modifying our laser frequency every 0.3 seconds. It's not much, but it might give us an edge." The Vorthic ships opened fire. Plasma beams that could melt continents streaked toward the tiny human vessel. So-young threw the ship into an impossible spiral, using the gravity well of the nearest planet to slingshot them out of the firing solution. "How did you do that?" Hyun-woo asked in amazement. "I don't know," So-young admitted. "I just saw the pattern in their firing sequence and reacted." More plasma beams filled space around them. The Defiance twisted and turned through the deadly light show, its crew working with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Dongwoo's modified lasers found gaps in the Vorthic shields. Hyun-woo's debris charges detonated at precisely the right moments to disrupt incoming fire. Yoonji pumped combat stimulants into the ship's life support system, keeping everyone alert and focused despite the crushing V-forces, but it was Taemin who truly began to terrify the Vorthic. He didn't just dodge their attacks, he learned from them. Every firing pattern was memorized. Every tactical maneuver was analyzed and countered. Within minutes, he was predicting their moves before they made them. "Impossible," the Vorthic commander's voice had lost its arrogant confidence. "How are you still alive?" Taemin's answer was simple: "We adapt." The battle that should have lasted 30 seconds stretched into its second hour. One by one, the mighty Vorthic dreadnoughts fell to the tiny human survey ship. Not through superior firepower, but through something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans who refused to accept that superior firepower meant inevitable victory. When the last Vorthic ship limped away into hyperspace, the crew of the Defiance sat in stunned silence. They had just defeated the impossible, and across the galaxy, the survivors carried a message that would shake the foundations of 50,000 years of cosmic order. The humans were coming. And they didn't fight like anything the galaxy had ever seen. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours. In the great crystal chamber that floated in the void between galaxies, representatives of 12 ancient species argued with a fury not seen in millennia. Supreme Overlord Zethver of the Vorthic Empire stood before the assembled delegates, his purple skin darker than usual with rage and shame. The energy patterns that normally danced across his ceremonial armor flickered weakly, reflecting his diminished status. "The humans destroyed 11 of our finest dreadnoughts," he reported, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Ships that have conquered 1,000 worlds, defeated by a single survey vessel with mining equipment." High Crystallin Veltar of the hegemony shifted her massive form, her diamond-hard carapace catching the chamber's light. How is this possible? The humans rank 847th in our threat assessments. They have no energy weapons capable of penetrating? Vorthic shields? They didn't penetrate our shields, Zephyr admitted. They found the adaptation cycles and exploited them in real time while under fire. No species has ever done that before. The Psionic Collective's representative, a being of pure thought given temporary form, pulsed with concern. Most troubling. Their minds operate on frequencies we have never encountered, chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. From the shadows, the Void Hunter's ambassador materialized partially. Its form shifted between dimensions as it spoke. We have observed these humans. They do not follow established combat doctrine. They improvise. They adapt. They learn during battle itself. Admiral Chang-ho SCO of the United Earth Forces stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, studying. The intelligence reports that had been intercepted from Galactic Council communications. The message was clear. They were coming. Captain B.O. Rai-Yun, report to the bridge. He called over the ship's intercom. Entered the bridge with quick, confident steps. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, but her eyes held the sharp alertness of someone who had spent years fighting pirates and raiders on the Outer Rim. She was the best tactical officer in the Earth Fleet, which was why Chang-ho had chosen her for this mission. Admiral, you wanted to see me? The Crystallin hegemony is sending their 5th assault phalanx to deal with us, Chang-ho said without ceremony. 200 ships with living crystal hulls that can regenerate damage and absorb energy weapons. They'll be here in 18 hours. Dora nodded calmly. How many ships do we have? 3. Your Retribution, the Guardian under Captain Jae-Sung Park, and the Vigilant under Captain Hae-Won Lee. Any sane military officer would have pointed out the impossible odds. Dora simply asked, what do we know about crystalline technology? Science. Officer Minesio Park looked up from her station. She had been analyzing the data from the Vorthic battle, trying to understand how 3 human ships could possibly face 200 crystalline vessels. The living crystal hulls are remarkable. Captain, they can absorb energy weapons and use that energy to repair damage. Kinetic weapons just bounce off. They're essentially indestructible. Essentially, Bara repeated, focusing on that word. But not completely. Well, no, Minesio admitted. Every material has structural weaknesses, but we'd need to find the exact resonance frequency of their crystal matrix, and that would require testing hundreds of different wavelengths while under fire. Tactical Officer Jae-Hoon Kim spoke up from his station. Captain, the crystalline fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They're moving in formation toward Proxima Station. On the main screen, the approaching fleet looked like a constellation of moving stars. Each crystalline ship was a work of art, their hulls grown rather than built, forming complex geometric patterns that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing ways. They moved with perfect coordination, their formation never wavering. They're beautiful, someone whispered. They're also here to kill everyone on Proxima Station, Bo replied. Jae-Hoon, what's their tactical approach? Standard overwhelming force doctrine, Captain. They're not trying to be clever. They have 200 ships, we have 3. They're just going to surround us and blast us until there's nothing left. Bo studied the formation carefully. There was something almost hypnotic about the way the crystalline ships moved. Perfect formation, perfect timing, perfect coordination. Min SEO, are they using some kind of network to coordinate their movements? Yes, Captain. They're using harmonic resonance to communicate. Each ship vibrates at specific frequencies to send tactical data to the others. It's actually quite elegant. And if we disrupted those frequencies? Min SEO's eyes widened with understanding. They'd lose coordination? But Captain, we'd need to generate the exact counter frequencies, and we don't have the equipment for that kind of sonic manipulation. Bo-Ra smiled grimly. We do now. Jae-Hoon, can we modify our communication arrays to generate specific sonic frequencies? It would burn out the systems after a few minutes of use, but yes, it's possible. Do it, Monaseo. I need you to analyze their communication patterns and find their resonance frequency. We're going to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Battle of Proxima Station began exactly as the Crystallin hegemony expected. Their overwhelming numbers allowed them to surround the 3 human ships completely. Plasma beams and energy torpedoes filled space as they opened fire from all directions. The human ships responded in ways that made no tactical sense. Instead of trying to break through the encirclement, they began using the asteroids in the belt around Proxima Station as cover and weapons. Captain Jae-Sung Park of the Guardian used his ship's tractor beam to hurl asteroids at incredible speeds, turning chunks of rock into kinetic weapons that struck with the force of nuclear bombs. Captain, hey, Wan Li of the Vigilant did something even more unexpected. She flew her ship directly into the corona of Proxima's star, using the solar radiation to mask her ship's signature, while the energy shields absorbed power from the stellar flares. But it was Biora's tactics that truly surprised the Crystallin fleet. She began broadcasting on seemingly random frequencies, filling space with what appeared to be meaningless static. "Unknown human vessels," came the transmission from the Crystallin flagship. "Your resistance is admirable but futile. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." "Counteroffer," Ra replied. "Listen carefully." The frequency of her broadcast shifted, and suddenly every Crystallin ship in the fleet began to shake. The harmonic resonance that coordinated their movements was being jammed by carefully crafted interference patterns. Ships collided with each other as their formation fell apart, but Minasio had found something even better. "Captain, I've isolated their hull resonance frequency. If we can generate the exact opposite wavelength ... do it." The 3 human ships turned their modified communication arrays toward the Crystallin fleet and began broadcasting. The sound that emerged was beyond human hearing, but its effects were immediate and devastating. The living crystal hulls that had protected the Crystallin hegemony for millennia began to crack and shatter. "Impossible," the Crystallin commander transmitted, his voice filled with something the galaxy had rarely heard from his species: fear. "Our hulls are indestructible. They have withstood the fire of 1,000 suns." "Everything has a breaking point," Bo replied. "You just never met anyone crazy enough to find yours." The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 200 Crystallin ships floated as debris in space, their beautiful hulls reduced to floating gemstones. The 3 human vessels hung in space, battered but victorious. On the bridge of the Retribution, Minasio was already analyzing the wreckage. "Captain, I'm detecting interesting properties in the crystal fragments. If we could somehow integrate this technology with our ship hulls..." "You're thinking of making our ships regenerate damage like theirs did?" Jae-Hoon asked. "Better," Min-Asio said with excitement. "I'm thinking of making our ships evolve." Across the galaxy, the surviving Crystallin ships carried news that shook the foundations of the Galactic Council. The humans hadn't just won another impossible victory. They had done something no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had turned their enemy's greatest advantage into their own weapon, and they had done it in the middle of a battle. The Psionic collective volunteered for the next engagement. They were confident that beings who could control minds across star systems could handle these unpredictable humans. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. High Cyan Kethmore floated in the center of the Mind Fleet's command nexus, his consciousness connected to every ship in the 40-vessel armada. The Psionic collective had ruled through mental domination for over 30,000 years. No species had ever resisted their telepathic control. Around him, the greatest minds in the galaxy focused their combined will. Master Cyan Velthara could crush the thoughts of entire planetary populations. War Mind Zefkorin had broken the spirits of 100 rebellious worlds. Together they commanded power that could reshape reality through pure thought. "The humans approach," Velthara's mental voice whispered across the psychic network. "A single vessel. They call it the Vindication. Kethmar extended his consciousness toward the approaching human ship, expecting to find the familiar patterns of an alien mind. Instead, he encountered something that made him recoil in shock. The human minds were wrong. Not damaged or inferior, but fundamentally different from every other species in the galaxy. Where other beings had organized, predictable thought patterns, the humans displayed chaotic creativity that defied all logic. Their minds jumped from idea to idea with no apparent pattern, generated solutions that shouldn't work, and somehow made sense of concepts that contradicted each other. This is impossible, Zefkarin's thoughts carried across the network. Their minds operate on principles we don't understand. How do they think in contradictions and still function? Captain Selkihan stood on the bridge of the U's Vindication, watching the psionic fleet arrange itself in a perfect sphere around her ship. She had volunteered for this mission knowing exactly what she was facing. The psionic collective could control minds across star systems. They had never lost a battle because they simply made their enemies surrender before the fighting began. "Captain," Communications Officer the Jin Park called from her station. "I'm detecting massive psychic energy buildup from the alien fleet. They're preparing some kind of mental assault." "I can feel it," said Commander Wu Jin Lee, pressing his hand to his temple. "It's like whispers at the edge of my thoughts. They're trying to get inside our heads." Engineer Sung-Ho Kim looked up from his console with concern. "Boss, my instruments are going crazy. The psychic energy they're generating is interfering with our electronics. If this gets worse, we'll lose life support." Selkie felt the alien presence pressing against her mind like cold fingers trying to pry open her skull. The sensation was deeply unpleasant, but she found she could push back against it by focusing on random thoughts. Her grandmother's recipe for kimchi. The time she fell off her bicycle when she was 7. The sound rain made on her apartment. Window back on Earth. "They're trying to find patterns in our thoughts," she realized suddenly. The Jinn start broadcasting random data on all frequencies. Music, poetry, math equations, anything chaotic. "Wu Jin, I need you to think about everything at once. Don't focus on any single idea." "Captain, that's impossible. No one can think about everything at once. Try anyway." The psychic assault hit them with the force of a mental hurricane. Kethmar and his fellow scions focused their combined will on the single human ship, expecting to overwhelm the crew's minds in seconds. Instead, they encountered something that violated every principle of telepathic warfare. The human minds didn't just resist control. They actively disrupted the psychic network. Jin's random broadcasts created feedback loops that scrambled telepathic communication. Wu Jin's attempts to think about everything simultaneously generated mental static that jammed psychic sensors. Most disturbing of all, Captain Selkie's mind proved completely immune to their influence. "I can't get a grip on her thoughts." Velthara's mental voice was strained with effort. "Every time I try to establish control, her mind changes direction. She thinks in patterns that contradict themselves. How can a mind contradict itself and still function?" Zefkarin demanded. Seul, Ki was asking herself the same question. The alien voices in her head were becoming clearer, and she could sense their frustration. They expected her thoughts to follow logical patterns, but human minds didn't work that way. She could hold two opposite ideas simultaneously and somehow make both of them true. "Sung-Ho, can you modify our sensors to emit the same kind of interference?" "The Jinn is broadcasting?" "I can try, Captain. But I don't understand how random noise will help us against psychic attacks." "It's not random to us," Selkie explained. "It's only random to them. Human minds can find patterns in chaos that other species can't see." As Sung-Ho worked his modifications, something unexpected began happening throughout the psionic fleet. The feedback from the human broadcasts was affecting their telepathic network in ways they had never experienced. Ships began reporting system failures as their psychically controlled technology malfunctioned. "The humans are like a virus in our network," Master Scion Velthara reported with growing alarm. "Their thought patterns are spreading through our connections. 3 ships have already lost psychic cohesion." Kethmar watched in horror as more ships in his fleet began to drift out of formation. The crews weren't just losing telepathic contact. They were losing their ability to think clearly. The chaotic human thought patterns were infectious, spreading through the psychic network and driving psionic minds toward madness. "All ships, break mental contact immediately," he ordered. "Full psychic isolation protocols." But it was too late. The damage was spreading faster than they could contain it. The Jinn's random broadcasts had found the exact frequencies that disrupted psionic thought, and Sungho's modified sensors were amplifying the effect. The mind fleet, which had controlled the thoughts of entire civilizations, was being driven insane by a single human ship broadcasting chaos. "Captain," Wu Jin reported with amazement, "half their fleet is dead in space. They're not responding to communications or showing any tactical movement. What happened to them?" The Jin asked. "I think we broke their minds," Selkie replied quietly. "They're used to organized, logical thought patterns. When they tried to control us and encountered human creativity instead, it overloaded their psychic abilities." The battle ended not with weapons fire, but with the complete collapse of the Psionic Collective's greatest fleet. Ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds through mental domination now drifted helplessly in space, their crews catatonic from exposure to the chaotic creativity of human thought. "This is High Scion Kethmer to the human vessel," came a weak transmission. We surrender. Please stop the broadcasts. Our minds cannot endure this chaos." "We're not trying to hurt you," Selkie replied. "We're just thinking the way humans think. If that's chaos to you, maybe the problem isn't with U.S. The surviving psionic ships fled in complete disorder, their perfect formations shattered, their confidence broken. For the first time in galactic history, the masters of mental control had been defeated not by superior psychic power, but by minds too chaotic for them to understand or control. As the Vindication hung alone in space, surrounded by the drifting hulks of the Mind Fleet, Selkie realized something that would have terrified the Galactic Council if they had known. The humans hadn't just won another impossible battle. They had proven that their minds operated on principles completely alien to the rest of the galaxy. They didn't just think differently. They thought in ways that other species couldn't even comprehend, much less counter, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon ever created. Supreme Overlord Zethver stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Council, his once proud form now bent with desperation. The great crystal chamber that had witnessed 50,000 years of cosmic order was filled with intention that made the very air crackle with fear. "3 of our greatest species have been defeated," he announced to the assembled delegates. "The Vorthic Empire, masters of energy. The Crystallin hegemony, beings of Livingstone. The Psionic Collective, controllers of minds across the galaxy. All have fallen to these humans." The remaining council members shifted nervously. The humans had proven that superior technology, indestructible defenses, and mental domination meant nothing against their strange abilities. What could possibly stop them? From the deepest shadows of the chamber, a figure materialized. The Void. Hunter Ambassador took form slowly, its body existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We will handle the humans," the creature said simply. Zethver felt a chill run through his body. The Void Hunters were the galaxy's most feared assassins. They could phase between dimensions, manipulate time itself, and strike from angles that didn't exist in normal space. They had never failed a mission in 100,000 years. "The humans have proven resourceful," Zethver warned. "They adapt to every challenge we present." "Then we will present them with challenges they cannot adapt to," the Void Hunter replied. "We will strike everywhere at once. Their ships, their stations, their leaders. They cannot adapt to attacks that exist outside of time and space." Admiral Yeon-hee Choi was reviewing tactical reports in her ready room aboard the U's Sovereignty when the lights flickered. For a moment, the walls seemed to shimmer, as if reality itself was becoming unstable. "Admiral to bridge," she called over the comm. Are we experiencing power fluctuations? Negative, Admiral, came the reply from Captain Johan Park. All systems are operating normally. But Yun, he knew something was wrong. After 3 impossible victories against superior alien forces, she had learned to trust her instincts. The humans had won through adaptation and creativity, but those victories had also taught them to recognize when they were being hunted. Sound general quarters, she ordered. All hands to battle stations. The klaxons had barely begun to wail when the first attack came. A figure materialized in the corridor outside Yan He's ready room, its form shifting between dimensions. The Void Hunter moved with impossible speed, its weapon cutting through space itself as it struck. Yan He threw herself aside as the dimensional blade carved through her desk, the metal simply ceasing to exist where the weapon touched it. She rolled behind her bookshelf and activated her comm unit. All hands were under attack by beings that can phase through solid matter, assume hostile borders throughout the ship. On the bridge, Commander Haijin Lee watched in amazement as more Void Hunters materialized out of thin air. Their weapons could cut through any known material, their armor existed in multiple realities simultaneously, and they moved with the fluid grace of beings who had mastered time and space. They should have killed the entire crew in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. Captain G1 Park seemed to anticipate their attacks before they made them, dodging dimensional blades with movements that defied physics. Lieutenant Su-Min Kim fired her sidearm at spots where no enemies were visible, only to have Void Hunters materialize directly into her line of fire. How are you doing this? One of the Void Hunters demanded, its voice echoing from multiple dimensions. You cannot see us when we phase between realities. We don't need to see you, Jawan replied, somehow knowing exactly where to aim his next shot. We can feel the probability waves you create when you manipulate space-time. The Void Hunters' form flickered with shock. No species had ever detected probability waves. The mathematics required were beyond the comprehension of most galactic civilizations. In the engineering section, Sung-Ho Kim was facing his own group of Void Hunters. They had expected to find him cowering behind his control panels. Instead, he was calmly working at his station while dimensional blades carved the air around him. What are you doing? One of the attackers hissed. Building a probability weapon, Sung-Ho replied without looking up. If you can exist in multiple dimensions, then I can build weapons that fire in multiple dimensions simultaneously. He pressed a button, and suddenly every Void Hunter in engineering screamed in pain as energy beams struck them across multiple realities at once. Their dimensional armor, which should have made them invulnerable, became their weakness as the human weapons targeted every plane of existence they touched. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were learning from the attack in real time. Every Void Hunter advantage was being analyzed, understood, and countered within minutes. In her ready room, Admiral Yeon-hee had done something that should have been impossible. She had captured a Void Hunter's phase technology and was already reverse engineering it. Fascinating, she said, studying the dimensional manipulation device. You're not actually moving between dimensions. You're convincing reality that you exist in multiple places at once. But if reality can be convinced of one thing, she made a quick modification to the device and activated it. Suddenly, her sidearm existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. When she fired, the energy beam struck the Void Hunter across multiple planes of reality, overloading its defenses completely. You're cheating, the dying Void Hunter gasped. We're evolving. Yeon-hee corrected. The battle that was supposed to end human resistance in minutes stretched on for hours. The Void Hunters, who had never failed a mission, found themselves facing an enemy that not only adapted to their attacks but improved upon their technology during combat. Captain Ji-won Park had somehow learned to navigate probability streams, moving through spacetime with an intuitive understanding that took most species millennia to develop. Commander Haijin Lee had created weapons that existed in all dimensions at once, making the Void Hunter's phasing abilities useless. Lieutenant Soo-min Kim had developed temporal sensors that could track enemies moving through time itself, but it was Admiral Yeon-hee who achieved the impossible. She didn't just defeat the Void Hunters. She captured their technology and made it better. Within hours of the first attack, human ships throughout the fleet were equipped with improved phase drives, temporal manipulators, and dimensional weapons. Retreat. The lead Void Hunter commander transmitted to his surviving forces, "Full retreat. Do not engage the humans again." "But our mission," one of his subordinates protested. "Is suicide," the commander replied. "These beings don't just adapt to our technology. They steal it and improve it while we're still fighting them. We attacked with weapons that manipulate space and time itself, and they turned our own advantages against us in a matter of hours." As the surviving Void Hunters fled back to their dimension, they carried with them a message that would shatter the last illusions of the Galactic Council. The humans weren't just another species that had gotten lucky. They were something entirely new. They were evolution itself, given form and purpose, and they were coming for everyone who had stood in their way on the bridge of the sovereignty. Admiral Yeon-hee looked at the new technology her crew had developed. Phase drives that could move ships between dimensions. Temporal weapons that could strike enemies in the past. Probability sensors that could predict attacks before they happened. "Admiral," Captain Yuan said quietly, "I think we've become something new." Yeon-hee nodded. "The question is, what do we do with these abilities?" The answer would reshape the galaxy forever. 6 months after the defeat of the Void Hunters, the galaxy was a very different place. What had once been the ordered territories of the Galactic Council was now filled with the wreckage of 4 civilizations that had considered themselves the masters of the universe. Admiral Tae-young Shin stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, watching salvage crews work through the debris fields that marked the final battles. Each piece of wreckage told a story of impossible human victories, but more importantly, they told the story of what humanity had become. "Admiral," Communications Officer Dune Park reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the remaining council representatives." "They're requesting a meeting," Tae-young nodded. He had been expecting this. The surviving members of the Galactic Council had finally realized what they were truly facing. Put them through. The holographic image that appeared showed a collection of alien beings in what appeared to be a simple conference room. Gone were the crystal chambers and displays of cosmic power. These were the remnants of once mighty civilizations, and they looked very much like refugees. Supreme Overlord Zethfer stepped forward, his once proud form now humble and defeated. "Admiral Shin, we formally request an audience to discuss terms." "Terms? For what?" Tae-young asked, though he already knew the answer. "Surrender," Zethfer replied quietly. "The Galactic Council formally surrenders to humanity." Around the bridge, the human crew exchanged glances. They had started this conflict as explorers on a simple survey mission. Now they were being offered control of the galaxy. "We don't want your surrender," Tae-young said finally. "We never wanted to fight you in the first place." "Then what do you want?" This came from High Crystallin Veltar, her diamond-hard voice carrying a note of confusion. Tae-young was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. The mining operations that had started it all. The millions of innocent beings who had died while the Council maintained their natural order. The arrogance that had led 4 powerful species to their destruction. "We want you to leave the younger species alone," he said at last. "No more mining operations on inhabited worlds. No more slavery disguised as natural order. No more hierarchy based on who has the biggest weapons. And if we refuse," asked a representative from one of the smaller council species, "then you'll face the same fate as the Vorthic, the Crystallin hegemony, the Psionic collective, and the Void Hunters," Admiral Yeon-hee, Choi's voice added as her image joined the conference. "But I don't think you want that." The alien representatives looked at each other with expressions that needed no translation. Fear. They had seen what humans could do when challenged, and none of them wanted to experience it firsthand. "What happens to us?" Zethfer asked. "You figure out how to coexist." Peacefully with your neighbors, Tae-young replied. You help younger species develop instead of exploiting them. You contribute to the galaxy instead of just taking from it. And if we need help learning how to do that? Then you ask, said Captain Selkihan, her image appearing in the conference. We're not here to rule over you. We're here to make sure the galaxy becomes a place where everyone can grow and thrive. The holographic conference ended with the formal dissolution of the Galactic Council's authority. For the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy would not be ruled by a hierarchy of power. 3 years later, Captain Bo Ra Yoon stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Haven Station watching ships from dozens of species work together on a massive terraforming project. Vorthic energy technology was being used to power crystalline regeneration systems, while former Psionic collective members used their telepathic abilities to coordinate the efforts of species that couldn't otherwise communicate. It's working, said engineer Minasio Park, joining her at the viewport. I never thought I'd see the day when the Vorthic would be teaching sustainable energy techniques to primitive species instead of enslaving them. People can change when they're given a reason to, Mu-Ra replied. Even if that reason is fear? Of what happens if they don't? Is that what we are now? The thing that everyone fears? Bo considered this carefully. It was true that human ships now patrolled former council space, and that no species dared to return to the old ways of domination and exploitation. But fear wasn't the only thing keeping the peace. Look at this project, she said, gesturing to the terraforming operation outside. 6 months ago, these species were trying to kill each other. Now they're working together to build worlds where young civilizations can develop safely. They're not just afraid of us. They're learning from us. Learning what? That growth is more powerful than control. That cooperation achieves more than domination. That helping others become stronger makes you stronger too. On the planet below, former mining sites were being converted into research facilities, where young species could develop their technology with guidance from more advanced civilizations. The Crystallin hegemony was teaching sustainable construction techniques. The Psionic collective was helping species develop peaceful telepathic abilities. Even the surviving Void Hunters were sharing their knowledge of dimensional physics for purely scientific purposes. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still species that tried to return to the old ways. But now there were human ships to stop them, and more importantly, there were other species willing to help maintain the peace. Admiral Tae-young Shin received a priority transmission as he reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The message was from a small, previously unknown species from the galactic edge. To the humans, the transmission began, we are the Kepler Union, a young civilization that has just achieved faster-than-light travel. We have heard stories of the changes in the galaxy, of how the old council was replaced by something better. We would like to request guidance as we take our first steps into the larger universe. Tae-young smiled as he drafted his response. This was the 15th such request this month. Young species that had once lived in fear of being discovered and enslaved by the Council were now actively seeking contact with the galactic community. Welcome to the galaxy, he wrote. We'll send a ship to meet you and help you get started. There's a lot to learn, but you're not alone anymore. As he sent the message, Tae-young thought about how far they had all come. Humanity had started as species number 847 out of 1,200, considered barely worth noticing by the galactic hierarchy. Now they were the guardians of a new kind of galaxy, one where potential mattered more than power. The debris fields still floated. In space, reminders of what happened when evolution itself was challenged. But they were no longer monuments to destruction. They had become something else entirely. They were proof that the galaxy belonged to those who could adapt, grow, and help others do the same, and humans were very, very good at that. In the depths of space, where the wreckage of the old order drifted in eternal silence, a small marker had been placed in both Korean and English. It read simply, "Here lies the old way of thinking. It challenged growth itself and lost. The galaxy belongs to those who build rather than break, who create rather than destroy, who lift others up instead of keeping them down. The message was signed by the United Earth Forces, but it could have been signed by any of the hundreds of species, now working together to build something better. The age of cosmic hierarchy was over, the age of cosmic cooperation had begun, and it all started because a few humans refused to accept that might made right.